Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on an absolutely incredible journey that literally spans thousands of years of human history. We're going to trace a direct line from the dusty, highly exclusive libraries of ancient Mesopotamia right up to the absolute bleeding edge of modern Web3 architecture. We're talking about how the very way we interact with language actually dictates our freedom. So get ready to completely rethink the software that runs your life. I want to kick things off by having you ask yourself a question. It seems simple at first, but it's actually incredibly profound. Who actually controls the physics of your digital reality? Are you truly piloting your own digital life? Or are you just kind of quietly renting space from invisible tech monarchs floating up there in the cloud? Think about that for a second. Because, as our digital and physical worlds continue to merge, whoever controls the execution of that digital world controls reality itself. If you don't own the underlying mechanics, well, you're merely a tenant in someone else's kingdom. And that brings us right to this really profound insight straight from our source material. Manual authorship overrides automated miasma. This basically sets up our whole core premise for today. True human intent, the literal sweat of the brow, is absolutely irreplaceable. When we just hand over our digital agency to massive, opaque AI algorithms and automated cloud services, we're basically surrendering our own authorship to this foggy, unpredictable miasma. We end up trading the crystal clarity of our own intentions for the supposed convenience of an invisible machine. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's a quick cognitive map of our journey today. We'll start with the modern scribe monopoly, then look at how we hacked the brain with chunking. From there, we'll reframe our view of code as operational literature, dive into the breakthrough ERC 7827 architecture, and finally, look at the rise of the sovereign pilot. All right, let's jump right into section 1. The modern scribe monopoly, and see exactly how hoarding execution reveals our first major historical parallel. So back in ancient Mesopotamia, literacy was most definitely not for the masses. There was this highly specialized professional class known as the Tup Shahu, and they intentionally hoarded the massive complexities of cuneiform just to consolidate power for the elite. By keeping the language complex and totally inaccessible, they maintained absolute control over society's operating system. And you know what? History is repeating itself right now. Today, by misclassifying code as just some purely technical, mathematical thing, we've created a modern scribe monopoly. We have these cloud royalists, massive tech giants, hoarding digital execution behind totally closed AI systems. They treat the true mechanics of the machine like it's a totally exclusive VIP club. And by convincing everyday people that code is just, way too complex to understand, they successfully lock us all out. This whole structural setup effectively crowns centralized platforms as what the source texts literally call agentic kings. Digital execution is completely walled off inside their fortress. And for the rest of us, well, we're reduced to poking at fragile graphical user interfaces. We're essentially just hitting shiny buttons for quick dopamine hits while the real heavy lifting work happens totally out of sight. It completely strips away our sovereignty. It makes us entirely dependent on their automated systems, basically turning us from active creators into passive consumers. So how did humanity fight back against these scribe monopolies in the past? Let's move on to section 2, hacking the brain with chunking, and explore something called the biological grid. The answer actually lies in the incredible design of human biology itself. See, our working memory has strict physical limits. It literally crashes if it gets overwhelmed with too much continuous data. So, to process complex language, our brains use this amazing biological feature called cognitive chunking. This is the process of projecting a biological grid onto information, buffering it into manageable, bite-sized, discrete units to prevent memory overload. It's exactly how we make sense of chaos. And when an alphabet or script perfectly matches this natural chunking process, well, incredible things happen for human progress. And this brilliantly illustrates the breakthrough. Ancient elite monopolies relied on languages that literally took years of dedicated study to master, and that was by design, precisely to keep the masses out. But contrast that with intentionally engineered scripts like Sequoia's Cherokee syllabary or the Korean Hangul. By finding the absolute optimal cognitive chunk size that perfectly synced with human working memory, they allowed everyday people to learn to read in a matter of days. Days! It completely shattered those ancient monopolies and created this rapid Sequoia speed mass literacy. It fundamentally proved that complexity wasn't actually necessary. The right tools could liberate a population almost overnight. Now, let's bridge that historical mass literacy explosion straight into our modern technological era with Section 3, Code is Operational Literature, where we realize that code is, in fact, highly expressive. It is time we fundamentally reframe how we view computer code. Code is not a cold machine. I repeat, it is not just math or mechanical gears clicking away in the background. It is highly expressive operational literature. Treating code as self-expressive literature, rather than just abstract, impenetrable engineering, is the absolute key to unlocking that exact same Sequoia-speed mass literacy for the working web today. When we misclassify code as purely technical, we're literally giving away our power. But when we embrace it as literature that maps our personal intent directly onto reality, that's when we take that power back. Let's walk through how this literature actually moves mountains. We call this the semiotic bridge. Step 1 is human imagination, that beautiful, nonlinear, associative thought process we all have. It's messy, it's emotional. Step 2 is the bridge itself, strictly formatted text, like JSON or Python, acting as a deterministic interface. This is the divine script that translates our messy thoughts into something a machine can actually understand. And step 3 is the hardware execution, where rigid physical silicon perfectly executes that exact script. Text is literally the only way to safely compile human imagination into exact physical action without losing our intent along the way. And this perfectly brings us to Section 4, ERC 7827 and Sovereign Tech, which introduces us to the modern syllabary. Let's see how this actually builds into modern network architecture. For decades, software used this upside-down floating tree metaphor. It's this top-heavy structure floating in the digital ether, relying entirely on cloud APIs, where you're, well, basically just a tenant renting space. The source documentation actually views this old model as a betrayal, a literal apostasy of the web's original promise of decentralization. Contrast that with the mathematically pure root-to-leaf architecture. It's grounded. It demands strict sovereign stewardship at the root, securely anchored to edge hardware that you actually own, rather than just floating aimlessly in some corporate cloud somewhere. The technological standard driving this new architecture is ERC 7827, which introduces something called value version control. This right here is our modern-day Cherokee syllabary. It takes standard, lightweight JSON text and literally turns it into a rigorous, human-readable, mathematical smart contract layer. What's absolutely brilliant about this is its pragmatism. It enables bit-perfect tracking of state transitions while still being 100% backward compatible with the ERC 721 and ERC 1155 tokens that developers are already using today. It bridges the old world to the new seamlessly. At the absolute heart of this protocol is the LIFO JSON tree, last in, first out. Because the last item to go in is always the first to come out, it unlocks incredibly efficient single-entry bookkeeping. You literally only ever need to query index 0 to know the exact current state. This pragmatic, beautifully simple tech breakthrough is exactly what mom-and-pop operators need. It empowers them to run their own servers, read and write their own operational literature, and verify their own rules, completely bypassing those bloated tech monopolies. They don't need a massive IT department to manage a complex database anymore. They just need this elegant, lightweight system to maintain perfect control of their own operations. Let's bring all these concepts together into an actionable, inspiring conclusion in our fifth and final section, Rise of the Sovereign Pilot, and look at exactly what it means to own execution. So the crucial point is how we actually claim this power for ourselves. Developers are increasingly using what's called chopsticks engineering, these light, elegant surgical maneuvers to completely bypass the heavy, bloated lift of the royalist cloud. Here are the 3 steps to achieving total digital sovereignty. 1. Secure the physical substrate. You have to actually buy and own the hardware sitting on your desk. 2. Publish your unalterable intent using explicit operational literature. Create a bit-perfect mathematical record of your mission. And 3. Execute locally using leaf node logistics. You command the hardware directly without ever having to ask some cloud API for permission. The core philosophy backing all of this up is so profound. You cannot separate human intent from physical execution. You must permanently bind the record directly to the substrate. Really think about that for a second. When you rely entirely on a cloud API, they separate your intent from the hardware. And in doing so, they completely sever your sovereignty. Your intent just gets processed in their black box, filtered through their algorithms, entirely on their terms. To remain truly free, the record of what you want to do must be permanently and locally bound to the actual machine that does it. As we integrate these immensely powerful systems into literally every aspect of our lives, you face a massive infrastructural choice. Will you just succumb to the cloud enclosure, remaining a digital tenant quietly renting your capabilities from an invisible tech monarch? Or will you wield this new operational literacy, secure your own hardware, and ride as the sovereign pilot of your own machine? The future of your digital freedom is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the architecture around you.